And my manager calls me and tells me that the guy who booked me was not happy with me, and that and then he said to her, she's doing Jewish jokes. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
So it's like, she's doing jokes about being a woman. I'm a woman. So, she's like talking about that, legs. I have legs. I mean, it was just everything that I did was like not right.
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hello.
Hello there.
You have way more credits than that, by the way, but I just ran through I was like, I could keep going, but it's
you could keep going and then add all the crappy ones too. At some point on your resume, you have to just get rid of stuff because then they see how old you are.
Oh my God, dude. Is that like a thing? Like, do you have to start? You're like, no, I'm brandy new. I just started in 2020.
I know, like my first writing job was on Brotherly Love, So
awesome.
I remember that show.
Yeah. The Lawrence Bros.
Yeah. That was a great one.
Yeah.
I remember. Was that the Ellen show was the second
the second sitcom. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I actually I do really like that one almost. I mean, I didn't watch enough of the first one. Like I watched like the pivotal moments and like whatever, but I remember when the second one came out, hilarious.
Yeah, it was a very, very funny show, but probably one of my least favorite gigs I've ever had in my life.
Oh, really? Why?
Wow.
Because of Ellen.
Oh, really? Oh, no. Let's get. Listen, you don't have to worry about shit now. She's off the air. Let's get into it. Let's make.
I've talked about it. Have you really? I haven't really held back. We just it was just a kind of a weird phenomena. Carol Leifer was one of the showrunners, who's a very good friend of mine,
right?
And Mitch Hurwitz, who did Arrested Development and a ton of other great shows. So the two of them were running the show, and I knew them both, and so I got hired, pretty much based on a spec script that I wrote, but that was a heavy influence, being a friend of Carol's.
Right.
So I'd never met Ellen, I was always a fan of her stand-up, didn't really know her personally. And for some reason, she just did not like me.
Wow.
And I don't know why, but she was very rude to me. And we had, it was really bad. It was really bad. So she just didn't respect writers. That was really kind of the big issue. And there were a couple of people on staff that were comedians too. Mm-hmm. So the biggest issue was that she never was happy with so much of what we wrote. So she would trash table reads and run-throughs. Right. So we would have to stay really, really late and rewrite so much of the episodes. Like she would tank certain scenes to make it seem like it wasn't working, just so we had to write something new. So I stayed there like 6 o'clock in the morning on many occasions.
So what is? I have a few questions here. So what is when somebody does something like that? When an actor does something like that, what's the vibe in the writers' room afterward? Is it just get it fucking done, or are you guys like how do you guys get through not just up and leaving? I mean, obviously it's your job and you have to kind of stay and do it, but the morale's got to be shit.
Yeah, the morale wasn't great, and it was really a shame because it was a great, great group of writers. I mean, there was people on there that wrote on The Simpsons and. Jeff Stilson, I don't know if you know Jeff, right? Comedian. Yeah. But, Jeff was one of the Osbourne people. It was just, you just had to suck it up, unless you wanted to quit. And, I knew what I actually left. My deal basically, was coming up. They not rehired me, but I got picked up for the back nine, and then my contract was coming up again, and I just said to Carol and Mitch, don't even bother fighting for me because I really do not want to be here. Wow. And I got the Osbournes actually. A friend of mine had worked on the show. I knew Jeff, and they needed one more segment producer.
Mhm.
They were looking for a comedian, and I got the gig, and I just went into their office. I went into Carol and Mitch's office, and I said, I have to go. It's just, I knew when I had to go when we were doing a taping, and there was a break. So I went out to have a cigarette, smoked at the time. And, and Ellen was a smoker. So she was standing like, I don't know, maybe 5 feet from me.
Mhm.
And she would never like make eye contact with me. It was like a really weird thing. And I came so close to telling her to fuck off in between a break. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the bigger person. I didn't want her to know that she got under my skin.
Sure.
But what she did to me repeatedly, which was just horrific and so disrespectful to a writer. You have the writer's room, right? So you have this kind of like square of people sitting around. And this is, Monday morning, you read through the new script. And she would go around and say hello to everybody. And so she would say hello to the person on the right of me, ignore me, and say hello to the person to the left of me.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
she did that repeatedly. And it was weird because like I didn't even know her. So
Right.
I don't know, did I remind her of someone she didn't like? Was she pissed that she didn't hire me? I mean, did she not think I was a good comedian because I was still doing stand-up at the time? Like, what was it about me that she decided to just be horrible? And
Right.
and there were other people, like, sometimes she would be mean to Jeff. It's like she just picked people that she didn't want to be nice to during the run of the show. And I just left, and then I got the Osbournes, and that was like the best gig I've ever had in my life.
I'm always curious, like what I have so many. When it comes down to something like that, I always wonder. Like I have questions. Like one, like does anybody get to say anything to that person? Is everybody too afraid because they're such a big star? Like
Yeah.
I always like in my mind right now, I'm like, I wonder if Carol Leifer was ever like, what the fuck is
Oh,
your
she was.
problem? Oh, she did.
Oh no, she never said it to Ellen, but she would say to me, and Mitch would say to me, like, I'll never forget. I wrote an episode. Oh no, I came up with a story.
Mhm.
And usually when you come up with a story, they'll give it to you to write.
Mhm.
So Mitch came into my office, and it's exactly what he said. He said, I just have to tell you that Ellen no likey Sue Kolinsky. And I was like, well, I kind of knew it because I was getting that vibe. And he said, I have a feeling that this is going to be a difficult week of writing with this particular show. So I don't want to give it to you because I don't want any more negative with you and Ellen. And if she knows that you were the one who wrote the script, I'd rather not do it. He says, so I'll give you story credit, and then we'll do something else with you.
Wow.
And that's basically what happened. So I the next time came around, I wrote the script. It was really great. It was fun. And it was a very interesting time in my life because I was one of two people that still smoked on the staff, and there were maybe, I don't know, 15 people.
Right.
So whenever I would go out and have a cigarette, it was one of those things when you're someone who's doing like a bad habit, people would kind of, people would judge you, you'd always get that kind of look like, oh, you're going out to have a cigarette, So, so I said to myself, okay, I had a writing partner on other shows before this. This was my first gig as a solo writer. So I said to myself, what if I quit smoking right when I have to go off and write my script? Because it will be the most difficult time to do it. But if I stop smoking now and pull this off, I'll never smoke cigarettes again.
Wow.
And you get 2 weeks to write the script, and I wrote it in a week. And I came back, and everybody's like, oh, wow, yeah, you did it in a week. That's great. Everybody loved the script. We did the table read. No compliment from her at all. And, look, it goes through the writer's room. So not everything, a lot of stuff, changes for the most part. They gang write it. And her girlfriend at the time, she was at the table read. And she came over to me and complimented me on the script and said, "This is going to be a really fun week." And it was probably one of the easier weeks we ever had, but it didn't matter. She just didn't like me, so it didn't matter. That never resonated.
So it was like no acknowledgement was the most you would get from her. Like just not negative.
Ambivalence is almost worse than confrontation and like just dickishness. When somebody doesn't even acknowledge your existence, you're like, oh, this is even worse.
But I'll tell you, the greatest feat, the greatest, what am I trying to say here? I got her really, really bad. This was the greatest payback. Larry David, I know Larry David forever. When I started, I knew Larry. So I got a kind of a surprise call to come and audition for Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, nice.
The casting director, Allison Jones, was a big fan of comedians. So she knew me and had seen me in the clubs or whatever. And so I got called in. And the only thing I hoped, even if I didn't get it, I just didn't want to suck because it's all improv.
Right.
So I was working on I was working on Newlyweds. So I was working at this place where MTV happened to just house our show, and I could walk to where the Curb Your Enthusiasm offices were. So I leave, all my coworkers, and I said, I have this audition, for Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I read, my scene is with Larry, and they give you like it looks like a fortune cookie fortune. And it's just like basically the gist of what you have to do in the scene.
Wow.
So I walk in, and Jeff Garlin was there. I think Susie Essman was there. So there were like 3 people in the room that I knew really, really well. So that was comforting, but also nerve-wracking because I didn't want to have a bad audition in front of them.
Sure. Yeah.
And Cheryl Hines was there. And Larry was, hey, Sue, how you doing? Oh, you got married. Oh, how do I not know you got married? Like, so we're having like all this conversation. We do the scene, and it was really fun and great. And I, go back to work, and later that day, I got a call that I got it. And my part, I played a lesbian who gets into a fight with Larry. And Rosie O'Donnell do you remember? It was the boat guy. Okay. So Rosie O'Donnell was like the leader of the lesbians, right? But Rosie, she's like East Coast, and Ellen is kind of West Coast,
right?
Yeah.
So Larry had, I guess he said to Carol that he was thinking of using Ellen in the episode, and she said, no, you can't use Ellen. And he's like, how come? And she said she was mean to Sue Kolinsky when we were writing on the show, and he was like, what? She was mean to Sue Kolinsky? What, are you kidding me? And he didn't hire her. And he hired Rosie. And I found out that Curb was Ellen's favorite show. So Carol said to me after the show aired, she said, Ellen was probably having conniption fit because it's her favorite show. And she should have been the Rosie part.
Right.
And then she sees you in it. Who she hates.
Oh my God. Fucking piece de resistance.
Oh,
that is great.
Man. It was the greatest payback. So
that is amazing. Which is a lesson to don't be shitty to people. Like, what the fuck? Like, especially in general, but also in this business. Like, I feel like it just does not ever pay. Like, just I don't get it. And you know what I want to, like, those millions of Diane Sawyer interviews, or like anytime they have like a touching moment with like a celebrity figure, I just want one of them to be like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, here's a laundry list. I don't want to hear about your struggles. We've heard about them. Why are you, what is wrong with you fundamentally? It's like James Corden, I heard is, I've heard from people who've written on his show, just a dick to his writers. It's people in that position being shitty to writers. And I don't understand because they hold you up. So what is your fucking problem with your staff? Like, and then you got guys like Conan, who I've never heard a bad word about. And you can tell is collaborative and loves being collaborative. And you're like, well, there you go. There's a perfect model, and that works. And you don't have to be a dick to get perfection. So what's your problem? Yeah.
And John, the other added element for me was that we were both comics.
Yeah.
And when you're crappy to another comic, I mean, we have been in the trenches together. Our profession is one of those professions where, you pull for people. And
Mhm.
we know how hard it was from the inception of standing online and picking a number out of a hat and and being in the bar and like the humiliation of I remember when I first auditioned at the Improv, it was like 1979 or 1980, and I remember they didn't even say your name. They just said number 8. I mean,
Holy shit.
oh God. So just knowing where we came from and how we had to claw our way and dealing with club owners and being on the road and just the life that we've led,
Right.
to be shitty to someone who went through that with you, was really just so I don't know, just disheartening and
Yeah.
it's like why you're really going out of your way to be a jerk.
Absolutely. And there's no like there's no excuse to not at least acknowledge it. It's or just like if you're a decent human being, I feel like if you're inadvertently shitty to somebody, you go like, holy fuck, I'm so I don't know why I was be a big enough person to be like, hey, look, I was threatened by you. I don't know why. It's from past. Like at least at the very least, you could have both bonded over the fact that you're women in comedy and maybe, she has these PTSD floods of flashbacks, I mean, I don't know if she does. I'm just making this up. But you know what I mean? Like, at least you could be the type of person to be like, hey, look, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. I had this competitive thing and I took it out on you. But no, I've never heard
it to be something weird and deeper. Like you look like the girl that picked her on her in high school or turned her down. There had to be something weird that you were.
But even then, like, when people do that kind of shit and they're like of a certain age where I'm like, okay, but you're 40. So just relax. You know what I mean? You're like, how long are you going to carry that fucking shit with? I get it, but also just don't be mean. That's fucking cruel. That's great though. That's the best revenge story. Like that you got that you prevented her from getting a gig. Oh, that's so sweet. You think it would have made her be a little bit nicer, but apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, and I'm sure she doesn't even know. I mean, she doesn't know why she didn't get it, but
yeah, but seeing you,
but I would remind her if she ever,
hopefully
if we ever work together. Hey, by the way, you piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. I would do if I was seriously, if anybody, I mean, I've done it. I'm not in any crazy position or whatever, but I have gone up to people who were shitty to me when I was younger and just said it. And especially during the pandemic, by the way, I don't know if you felt this way too, but like just because everything was collapsing, anytime somebody was in my DMs or if I had anything going on, like whatever, and they were like, hey, what's going on? I'd be like, yeah, you fucking were really rude to my manager one time for no particular reason. What was up with that? And they're like, oh, I don't, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to play those games. Like, why?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the Osbournes too, because I like that you literally transitioned from a show you were having a hard time on to something awesome. But I want to go touch on the stand-up stuff too. So you started in 79, you said, or 1980?
Yeah, I think it was like 79 or 80. I auditioned at the Improv in New York.
Who was your, do you remember your class, like your group that you came up with?
I came up with, do you remember Schmock and Valley? They became the Funny Boys. So,
oh my God! First of all, Jim Valley, good friend, love Jim, and I think I just may have missed him in New York because I'm a piece of shit.
Oh, that's right. He was there for Hiram's birthday party.
Yeah, I know. I fucking suck. I don't know where I wasn't around. I'm an idiot. Anyway, but I love Jim. Has been super duper nice. He's a great guy.
So like Reiser.
Oh, nice.
Leifer, Larry Miller, Jerry.
Oh.
Kevin Pollak. Well, Kevin Pollak was in San Francisco, but I kind of met him a little bit later, but he was kind of in my circle. Guys like Kevin Nealon. Yeah. I mean, there was a woman named Abby Stein. She was my first friend in comedy. She passed away years ago, but she was one of the, because there weren't a lot of women doing stand-up really when I started, that's not like the old time. I was in the 30s. But they really weren't. Like Susie Essman, Joy.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was, it was a pretty powerful group.
Yeah, you started with all monsters. They're like killers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember Carol telling me she got passed by Reiser at Catch a Rising Star, but was the improv the same way back then too? Did somebody have to pass you?
Well, actually, Silver did.
Oh, wow.
Silver did. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And, when I first started, I was actually an impressionist.
No way. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't. I don't tell a lot of people. But if you were around, obviously during the beginning days of me, yeah. So I did impressions for like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. And my hook was, because I have a deep voice, I did a lot of impressions of guys. So I did the wives of of their husbands because they sounded just like their
my
husbands,
God.
right?
That's so great.
It was so hacky, but it got me into the improv. And Silver passed me, and I thought, green comedian. I thought you had to do a different set every time you went on stage.
Oh my God, me too.
Wow.
Yeah.
You did too?
I did too. When I first started, I had a solid 5 minutes. Went up and did it, and it worked really well. And then I thought, I'm gonna do. They booked me for another gig, and I went to go do that gig. And I had new material, and they were like, "Oh, you're not gonna do like other comedians that were like, they're like, oh, you're not gonna do the same stuff that just worked." And I was like, no, I'm gonna do this. No one fucking told me because they were like, this is gonna be hilarious. And I went up and just like literally just ate it, and then
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand why, and then I was like, oh, okay, like you really have to like just keep your same shit. But it also made me, I think, a little stronger. Do you feel like it made you stronger from like trying to keep up with having new shit and going out there?
No. I'm joking with you. It definitely did because that's really that's what it's all about. I mean, you got to keep on doing new content. I
Right.
mean, obviously you hone your act, but you got to keep on sprinkling in new stuff. You just can't you can't just be sedentary with it. You have to do that.
Sure.
But I mean, I didn't know anybody. The way I got to the improv, this is so crazy. My godmother actually, she had a neighbor who was an older woman who was a wardrobe mistress for films, and my godmother had told her that I do impressions. I've been doing impressions ever since I'm a little kid. Like I was doing John Kennedy, when I was like 5 years old. So
wait, tell me you have like home movies of you doing a 5-year-old you doing John Kennedy.
I wish I did. I wish I did.
That'd be awesome.
So she told my godmother that there was a theater somewhere. She told her about the improv.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done one other gig, not really a gig, but it was a theater that a friend of mine, he was an actor, and they were having like a variety night. So it was singers, dancers, it was like America's Got Talent, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And they said you could do whatever you want, if you're doing your impressions or whatever. So I did that, and someone came over to me and said, you should go to the improv. But I had already known about the improv through my godmother's friend. So yeah, so I'm trying to think. I think I was like 17 when I went. My brothers, I have 3 older brothers, and they came into the city with me. I was living in Long Island, and they came out as kind of like my posse. And yeah, it was very cool. It was very exciting the first time to actually pass. That was very cool.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet. And did you immediately did you know about hanging out afterward at the club, building the relationship with comics, stuff like that? Or did you did it take some time?
I didn't really stay with it.
Okay.
I just felt like, I don't know. I felt like maybe I wasn't really ready to be part of that scene. I was really young, and I waited some years, maybe 2-3 years.
Okay.
And then I went back, and I got in it at Catch a Rising Star.
Nice.
But I just wasn't getting spots. I just felt like my stupid idea was, I'll go out to California and I'll get spots out there. And it was so much harder to get spots out there.
Wow.
So, I worked as a legal secretary for like 3 years or 4 years. But the guy that I worked for was the coolest guy in the world. And he knew that I had aspirations to be a comedian. So, he said to me, if you get a gig, because if I got a gig, I couldn't just quit my job because I needed to know that I was getting more gigs. It was like, 1 week of work, I couldn't quit my job.
Sure.
But he said to me, as long as you can replace yourself with somebody, I just need someone to sit there, answer phones, do some typing. You can do whatever you want.
Nice.
And he was really, the reason why I was able to pursue. So my first gig was at the Sacramento Laughs Unlimited.
Oh, wow.
And I was the opening act.
Is that around anymore?
I don't know, but it
Laughs
was
Unlimited.
really great when it first opened. So
nice.
I don't
In San
know.
Francisco, that's got to be huge for you to go to.
It was in Sacramento.
Oh, Sacramento. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. But still, that's still like fucking huge to go. You know what's crazy? I feel like people don't talk enough about, you know, because I've had employers that done the same thing. I've had employers that absolutely hated that I had any kind of life outside of the drudgery that was the part-time job. But I had a few who were really, really nice and very, very kind, and were like, same thing. If they knew I needed a weekend, or if they knew I had a gig or whatever going on, man, they would just like look the other way and not give me shit about it.
This guy, I'm still friends with him.
Nice.
He was, I guess, around 6 years older than me. He was very, very funny. When I got the job, I actually looked for a waitress job when I first went out to LA because I thought it would be the most flexible.
Sure.
And I couldn't get a waitress job. So I was like, how could I not get a waitress job? So I looked in the classifieds in the LA Times, and there was a job, and he wrote crazy lawyer looking for crazy secretary, flexible hours. So I called him. I went in for an interview. He was like a really good looking guy, very funny, very cool.
Nice.
And then I didn't hear from him. So I was like, oh man, I had like the best interview. So I called him the following Monday, I guess it was. And he said, oh, you got the job. I said, oh, you're keeping it a secret? Were you not going to tell me? So he said, come in tomorrow. No, take the day off. Don't come in tomorrow. Come in the next day. And that was the beginning of, it's like, you know, Casablanca, like one of the most incredible relationships I've had in my life.
Wow.
Awesome.
It was just great. And you know, he was a big pot smoker, and, you know, we would smoke pot all the time, and he would always let me take off. And one thing that I remember, because I never had like a civilian job where I felt like I was totally respected. Like I was always like, you were always kind of like, you always had to do things that you just felt like weren't really your job.
Mm-hmm.
To like pick up someone's dry cleaning, or, you know, do things that it was like, well, you didn't hire me to be like a gopher. You hired me to be a legal secretary.
Right.
Yeah.
And he never, there was never anything demeaning. Like he never talked down to me. Like when clients were in his office, he always treated me like an equal.
Nice.
And yeah, so I've been friends with this guy, God, like 40 years.
Did he come out to see you?
Yeah, he was very, very supportive, and the woman that he had been dating became his wife.
Oh.
So, you know, his kids, I mean, everything. His kids have kids now. And then I was telling you, you know, before we came on the show, Carole Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was Wendy Liebman that actually, this is a great story. So Wendy Liebman, out of nowhere, sent me an email and said, you really, really need to do stand up again. And she would like, cause she hosted a room in LA for a while.
Homegrown.
Oh yeah. Homegrown.
Yeah.
So,
great,
you know, so
great room.
it's a great room. So I would go there and, you know, just see comedians, whatever. And she came over to me one day and she said, you really need to get back on stage. And I hadn't done stand up in like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, thank you. She says, oh, you know, you were so good. It's just, you know, she said, yeah, I just can't believe that you don't do it anymore. And I said, you know, it's just not my life anymore. You know, I became a writer. I started working on all these, you know, reality type of shows and the hours. And I just said, you know, it's just not my life.
Right.
I left stand up because I didn't want to be on the road as much as I had been on the road. I didn't want that life anymore. I was in a relationship with somebody and I was away all the time. So I started writing, and I loved it. And I, you know, even like acting, you know, it was something that I just said, you know, if something happens and someone surprises me and says, hey, you want to, you know, act in this or that, but I stopped pursuing it and it felt so good. So anyway, cut to Wendy, you know, saying you got to do it. So I said, I thank you, but I'm not going to. So wow. She sends me an email and she said, here are 4 dates, pick one. I said, Wendy, I don't want to do it. So I finally picked the latest date that I could possibly do it. So it was December 27th. And at the time, I think it was maybe April. And I'll tell you, John, every day I was nervous that I had to do stand up in like 6 months.
Wow.
So, and I kept on thinking, I'm going to cancel. I'm going to cancel. So,
Mhm.
but I'll just wait. So at that time, my husband's entire family lives in Florida, and we would always go to Florida for Christmas.
Oh.
So, my husband's birthday's on the 26th, and that was the day we were planning on coming home, and the date of the gig was the 27th.
Mhm.
So we had to change planes, and of course the weather was horrible. So we get stuck in Chicago, and my husband said, because I was just like freaking out, I had so much anxiety about doing stand up,
Right.
and he said, well, maybe we won't be able to get home, and then you won't have to do it. And I said, yes. So we end up we end up flying to St. Louis, and we have to stay overnight, and then we're able to get to LA in time for me to do the gig. But I'm still thinking I'm gonna cancel like 2 days before. But that night in our hotel room, we turn on some local talk show, and Judd Apatow is the guest.
Wow.
And the question that was asked to him was, what do you miss the most about stand-up? And he said, hanging out, just hanging out in clubs, the camaraderie with other comedians, writing jokes on napkins and matchbook covers. And it just brought back all the things that I missed so much about doing stand-up. And I looked at my husband and I said, I'm not going to cancel. I'm going to do it. And I had written some new jokes,
Yeah.
And I went on at Vitello's, and it was really fun.
Mhm.
And then Carol was doing her this before it became the big, success that it is now.
Right.
She was doing Women of a Certain Age at this really cool theater in Venice,
Mhm.
and it was kind of like a intimate, kind of like a Comedy Cellar, kind of feel to it. Small room, and I went to one of the shows, and she came up to me and she said, would you like to do our next show? And it was, I don't know, maybe like 4 months away. And I said, I don't know if I can do this. And she said, please do it. I really want you to do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And that show, that was one of those shows where I kind of couldn't believe that I didn't do stand-up anymore, because it was that good.
Wow.
It was just magical. And then I kind of did it a little bit after that, but I knew I wasn't going to put the time in.
Right.
And you have to. You can't just be a seasonal comedian. You can't just do it sporadically.
Right.
You have to write. You have to perform. I was forgetting my act, and I just wasn't committed to do it, because my life was doing other things. That was really my livelihood, was producing. So
and it is a headspace that you're in. You start to think a certain way when you're doing it all the time too. So that's how you create, I don't have to tell you that, but you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that when you're doing it every now and again, you're holding on to stuff that works and falling back on other shit, but you're not necessarily in the headspace or the brain space to be like, banging it out every night.
Right.
And that's cool that Vitello's is a great place. I mean, if you're going to go back up anywhere and start it again, one of Wendy's shows, that's the best.
The greatest audiences. I mean, they're just so, I hate to say forgiving, because that's not really what I mean.
I know what you mean, though.
But they just, they're real comedy fans.
Yeah.
And they're very, very supportive. And I mean, I don't think any audience is really an easy audience, but they really, really got it.
Yeah.
And a lot of repeat customers, and she just created such an amazing vibe. I mean, her emceeing is so brilliant.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
when I was there, I was amazed. Like the people that were just in the audience, I can't even. It was like, I think when I was there, it was like somebody from the Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, they're just popping up, standing up for like 2 seconds and waving, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
I know. Well, her husband, Jeff Sherman, he is friends with he was friends with like the Monkees, Mike
I know,
Nesmith,
isn't that crazy?
And he's really good friends with Mickey Dolenz, and Nancy Allen, the actress, would always be there, and
right,
like newsmen, those people
my-
like,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think one of my the most jealous I am of his friendship is probably with Dick Van Dyke, or just knowing anybody that gets to get remotely close. I'll stand out on his front lawn and yell. I don't care at this point. I just want to see him through a window. Anything like that would be nice.
I tell you, it's probably one of the coolest things that I could take away from stand up. It's like the people that I knew as kids that came into my life. Like I opened for Rosemary Clooney one week.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was crazy. So I get this gig. We had the same agent, so they do this package thing. And
wow.
I was so not the right comedian to be opening for her. It was like just like a very, very old audience. It was in a provincial part of Massachusetts. It was a theater in the round. It was like everything that could go wrong went wrong the first night.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who booked the room, and I didn't get to meet Rosemary the first night because this was at a time in her career where she had like CPOD. She had to take breaks. She couldn't do like one complete set. So the comedian would go on. No, she would go on first, and then I would go on in between, and then she would come and do her second set.
Right.
So I didn't get to meet her the first night. And I guess I had to do like half an hour, and I really struggled. And I had done jokes about being Jewish and whatever, and I was like getting nothing. Like nobody was like they couldn't relate to me at all.
Right.
So I was I was upset, and I was like, there's no way in the world I can stay here. And I go back to my hotel room, and my manager calls me and tells me that the guy who booked me was not happy with me, and that and then he said to her, she's doing Jewish jokes. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I'm Jewish.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, she's doing jokes about being a woman. I'm a woman. So, and she's like talking about that, legs. I have legs. I mean, it was just everything that I did was like not right. So I said to my manager, you have to get me out of here. I can't stay here. It was a week gig. Right. And then there was like 2 shows on Sunday, and it was like an afternoon show. I was like,
holy shit.
I swear, I said, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. Do not keep me here. She said, okay. I talked to the guy. He's going to cut your set to 20 minutes. I told him you wouldn't do any Jewish material. And just see what happens tomorrow night. And if it's terrible, I'll pull you and you'll come home.
Wow.
So the next night, I'm waiting in my dressing room. It's like dressing room. It was like a closet. And Rosemary comes in and introduces herself. And she said, I heard you want to leave. And I said, yeah, it was kind of a rough night last night. She said, I really don't want you to leave. She said, you're very, very funny. And she said, you're smart. And I mean, it was crazy. She was like using me and Dennis Miller's name in the same sentence, which was like, oh God, Rosemary, what are you thinking? But she was so complimentary, and she said, please don't leave. I really want you to stay. So the next night was better. Yeah. And then the night after that was even better. And then I ended up going out to dinner with her a couple of nights and like hanging out with her, with her boyfriend, this guy, Dante, who's a really cool guy. And she just told stories. Like all these great, like she's telling me the story about when she was married to Jose Ferrar. They used to take these trips and they would go on barges. And she said back in the day, that was like a really popular thing. And you'd have a chef and we'd go with like Boris Karloff and his wife. And I was like, whoa. I said, you were friends with Boris Karloff? You know?
My God.
And she said, oh yeah, we were great friends. And I said, what was he like? She said, oh God, he was very, very funny. I just knew him from being like Monsters, you know, and he'd like ghoulish. And so, and then, she talked a bit about being friends with Bob Hope and her relationship with Bob Hope. And then when we got back to LA, she gave me her phone number and she said, call me and we'll have lunch. And I called her, and then she wrote me a really, which I actually have framed, a really beautiful card saying like, sweet Sue, so great to hear from you. I'm going to Florida, for a couple of months, but when I get back, we're going to get together. And then soon after she passed away. So I didn't.
Oh man.
But I mean, like stuff like that, like, I mean, do you have comedians that you worked with, like older comedians?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, that's the kind of stuff that I don't think people realize. Maybe, I don't even know, other performers must know it because people must have done it for them, but it just carries you like farther, like you just ride on that fuel and those compliments and just that great experience for a long time. It gets you through a lot of shitty gigs. It gets you through a lot of like self-doubt because you're like, who likes me though? Rosemary Clooney.
Yeah.
I had, I had a lot of guys in the beginning, who just were really, really nice to me. And actually Carol's one of them. When I was a kid, when I started doing stand-up when I was 20, I know you started when you were 17. I always think, I always feel like I should have started younger, and everyone's like, what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things, but I'm like 20, like it never seems like early enough, but
20 was young.
Yeah, 20 is young. It's not bad. And then I'm like, but when I hear somebody who's like, I started when I was 17, I was like, damn it.
Well, look at Rodney Dangerfield, started at 45.
I know. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. But yeah, like I've had a lot of those kind of people who are really nice to me. The guy that I first opened for, my first national headliner was Jimmy Fallon. And I got to do 5 days with him, and 5 days, and I was working like a part-time job. I obviously hated at the time. And I was still, it was, I think I was only 3 or 4 years into comedy, and Harlan and Arlene from Bananas Comedy Club were like, do you want to open for Jimmy Fallon? And I was like, are you crazy? And they were really nice to me then. So I got to open for him. I got to meet his family. I got to meet his sister. His mom and dad were there. His sister was there. And then he was just always the nicest dude, very complimentary after my set. And I think you can probably tell I was a little like, what the fuck am I doing here? Whatever. But his audience was super nice. And then his family came out and was like, you were great. That was so much fun, blah, blah, blah. They took pictures with me afterward. And I was like, didn't matter what anybody said to me after that. I was on a bit of a high for a while after that. And it's just nice to have it. And then I went and got a VIP thing to go see him at the show at NBC. Because it was right before he took over for Conan. And he was doing this Q&A with the audience. And he kept like he came up the aisle that I was sitting in. And I didn't want to say anything. So I was just sitting there. And then he kept looking at me, and then he kept looking at me again. And then he was like, I don't know it's like, I know your face. And then I was like, oh, well, I got to open for you when I was like a younger comic or whatever. And he's like, oh my God. And I had like a photo, and he's like, yeah, I remember Bananas, like, blah, blah, blah. And he just ignored everybody else and started like talking to me. And he was like, where are you going? You go, like, you got to be on the, and I was like, oh, I'm doing college gigs. I was like still like maybe late 20s, but I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a Thomas College in Maine. He goes, whoa. That's a rough like, fuck Jimmy, come on, man. I was like, I'm first time there, but yeah, he was just great. So stuff like that always made me super happy.
Yeah. I mean, like Leno was one of those comics, when I was coming up, that I got to know quite a bit, and he was the one who actually told me to stop doing my impressions.
Oh, really?
Wow.
He said, just be yourself, just do you,
Wow.
And I actually was kind of feeling that, because I would watch comics who would just talk about their lives, and it was personal, and they had a point of view, and I didn't. Yeah. I just was telling, just doing impressions and doing jokes that had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And I really, I didn't want to do that anymore. So.
And you could probably see you were funny just outside of that kind of thing, just talking to people. Yeah,
exactly.
You know who else was really nice to me, oddly enough? Ellen DeGeneres. Imagine if I had this sweet story. I was like, she took me out, begged me to write for her.
She paid my rent.
I don't know what it is.
Gas money.
Yep. Gas money. That's so important, though.
Cab fare.
Yeah, whatever I needed. Just a real sweetheart. Yeah. But I love, I met, I got to meet, I got to do an interview with Paul Reiser, but it was just a print interview. Because he's got his, team and everything like that. So I don't know that they knew necessarily what this was. And I was like, oh, but I've had so-and-so like Robert Klein. And I was kind of like but they're also 20. So or 22, you know, so they don't fucking, you know, I'm like Robert Klein, and they're like, that's definitely a name. You know, and I'm like Stuart, you know, like trying to get whatever. So they didn't, but they, you know, I was nice enough to get to talk to him on the phone. It's supposed to be like a quick interview. We wound up talking for like an hour and a half on the phone, to the point where his wife was like, "Are you still on with that?" And he was like, "Yeah, we're having a conversation, we're talking." And then so we're having a good time. And then he's like, "Come and hang out like afterward." And that's something that's like, you know, again, it's really, really nice. And I appreciate it anytime somebody who's, you know, way up there and has a shit ton more experience than I do is like, "You're okay." And I'm like, I am okay.
Yeah. Well, Robert Klein, you know, I just met him recently. I met him this year because I've been working on a documentary. I've actually working on a documentary about Silver Friedman, who owned the Improv.
Yeah.
So
I only met her once. I only got to do the but I don't know her. But everybody's like, I'm kind of like gathering stories from like little bits and pieces. So a documentary would be fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, you know, I mean, she was really the one who there would be no improv without Silver Friedman, and Bud gets all the credit, unfortunately.
See, I did not know that,
because she was you know, she was a Broadway showgirl, you know, and she was like, you know, singer and dancer, and she, you know, she was in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying with Robert Morris. She was an understudy, but she did get to, you know, be on Broadway.
Right.
And when she met Bud, you know, he was I think he was like an ad guy, you know, he was a businessman. And he knew nothing about show business. And it was really her idea to open a room for her Broadway show friends, because a lot of the restaurants and clubs in the Broadway district were pricey. So she and her friends couldn't afford to go to Ciro's and places like that.
Sure.
So they opened up this like coffee house, and she came up with the name. And it was basically her idea. And look, she probably wouldn't have done it without Bud. Like, they probably wouldn't have done it without each other.
Right.
But he certainly would never have done it without her. So, you know, we just want to put her on the map, and, you know.
Yeah, it kind of makes me angry that I did not know that this entire. I'm a huge comedy nerd, and I've got all these books and stuff like that, and I did not know that she was that instrumental in creating the improv.
Yeah, well, you look up her name; she's basically, you know, his wife, his ex-wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that is wild. Sorry to interrupt you. You were saying something about Robert Klein.
So Robert Klein. So we went to Robert Klein's house to interview him for the documentary.
Nice.
And I had met him a long time ago. He did a show called Stand-Up Sit Down.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
So they filmed in Orlando at Disney World. And so I don't know if you know, the premise of the show was that you would do your set, and then you would sit down with him, and he did an interview with you.
Yep.
So it was such a long time ago. And so I basically walked into his house, and within like a minute of knowing him, he started calling me Kolinsky. And I was like, oh, I love you so much. I mean, it was just so warm, and it was like, you're going to be my friend now, you know? And we ended up, you know, texting one another, and he came on my podcast, and we had such a great time together. But it's something like that. I mean, it's the antithesis of Ellen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And here he is.
But that's a good point. It is. It's like, how the hell are these other, like, what in the holy hell happened in her life that she's like, you just can't do something like that? When I had him on, we'd hit it off. I got to go see him, you know, do his show and everything. I had to talk to him backstage and stuff. And then, you know, we had each other's numbers. So I was doing this red carpet gig in New York at the Swedish consulate, and we were supposed to meet up or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to be in the city. I get a phone call, or I give him a call or whatever, and he picks up the phone immediately, and same thing. He goes, Poveromo. Just like, I'm like, what's going on, man? And I'm like, he's like, oh, I can't. Like, we had to reschedule, but he goes, what are you doing in New York again? And I go, I'm doing a red carpet gig at the Swedish consulate for the music industry. And he goes, because when I think of the music industry, I think of the Swedish. And then I was sitting on a stoop outside of somebody's fucking building in New York, and he's just doing like 20 minutes on the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, he's so great.
Oh, he's such a class act. Such a class act.
Absolutely. It's so when Leno told you to not do the impressions though, like, was it an easy transition for you to go into stand-up, or were you trepidatious about it?
It was a little difficult because I like had to like write stuff about myself, and but I did have great resources. I grew up. I'm the youngest of 5. So I definitely did have access to a lot of material. And getting on stage. I remember I don't even know if I remember the first time I went on stage and just did stand up. But it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. But it was just liberating, actually.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. That's got to be like
Yeah.
a great feeling to just be like, oh my God, it's just me and I'm funny and I'm not relying on like a character or whatever. Not that that's not a great art. I mean, if you can do impressions, that's fucking sick.
And I need to know, do you still do impressions here and there at home? Do they still leak out on occasion?
Every now and then I may do Johnny Carson, just like
Oh,
joking.
nice.
But my podcast partner is always trying to get me to do something.
That's the perfect venue though to do it. If you're gonna do a little Carson, just do a little podcast. Nobody knows. Are you one of the like comics of that generation who like revered Carson?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember my parents watching The Tonight Show, and we had a 3-level house. So all the kids' bedroom, all the bedrooms were upstairs, except for my oldest brother, who had the cool downstairs bedroom with like his own bathroom, and he had access to the outside. That was the bedroom we all aspired to when we left. Like, who's gonna get Alan's room? And
that's great.
So I remember my parents watching The Tonight Show, and I would be by the banister in like earshot of the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like Alan King, who was really my introduction into
love
stand-up.
Alan King.
Just loving stand-up, because he talked about everything that I could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
It was just growing up Jewish and all the it sounds like such a stereotypical thing, but like, with like, turning the air conditioner up, turning the air conditioner down,
Yeah.
you're going to eat that. Is that what you're wearing? Just all the things that I grew up with. And so and they never knew. I mean, I would just sneak down, listen to as much as I could. And then if I heard like a rustling, like maybe they were getting up to come in my direction to go into the kitchen to get something, I'd go upstairs.
Right.
But yes, Johnny Carson was the king.
Yeah.
And also, I grew up, I watched the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh,
So,
I don't get that guy. Yeah. I mean, I understand. I'm not even like, I know. Listen, I mean, like, I fundamentally, I get it. I've got all the, I get it. But like, MeTV plays the reruns all the time. And every now and again, I see him and I'm like, how the fuck was this guy like,
I know.
I don't know. I don't get it.
And he was so powerful.
Yeah, totally. Seemed like a nice enough guy, but what a fucking weirdo. Like, what?
He was
like,
total, in every sense. I mean, he was a weird looking guy. And, and now and here I was like, I remember Paul Provenza actually did such a funny impression of Ed Sullivan, because he would always like do this with his arms, and he around, and he would be sort of right now and here and who's coming up, and it's like it was like his arms were like Gumby, like wrapping around his body. But to get on the Ed Sullivan Show was like, oh man, you really made it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there were 3 channels.
Exactly.
So like, this was it.
I'd kill for these 3 channels. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I don't even understand. There's too much shit going on right now, especially with like just the Twitter stuff and Elon's taking over and who's going to do what to, I don't know.
Even with shows, like, there's not a day that goes by that someone says to me, have you seen this? And I was like, no, what is that?
Right.
Have you seen that? It's like 50 shows that I've never heard of.
And
they're
and they're like wildly popular with people. Like, they're like, oh, it's critically acclaimed by who the fuck?
I know. And then they'll look at me like, what's wrong with you? You haven't seen that? And I was like, no, I don't even know what it is. And you always sound like the old timer, but the idea of watching a talk show.
Yeah.
Because you grew up watching Johnny, and you basically knew most of the people that were on. Like, they didn't have to like do a lower third and tell you who the person was and what they were on, And now it's like, who is this?
Yep.
I know. Yeah. And it's not only just TV, like you were talking about all the social media. So you have like people who are famous from TikTok and people who are famous just from Twitter, and it's like they're Twitter stars, and
Yeah.
it's like, all right,
Crazy.
great, I mean, great for them. I look back at when my comedian friends, we used to make videos, but we had no outlet. It's like we made them for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
You think like, oh God, like if we only could have taken these
Mhm.
and showed them to people,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it would have been pretty cool. But we just shared it with, because like the Improv, they used to do Christmas. We used to do Christmas videos, and I
Wow.
think the comic strip maybe did them too. I don't think Catch ever did them,
Right.
but they were like heavily produced. When we found out that the Improv was going to be closing, Michael Patrick King from Sex and the City, who was comedian,
Yep.
back in the day, he took It's a Wonderful Life and and dubbed all of the
Awesome.
voices to be like people from the club, and someone was Silver, and someone was Jimmy Stewart, and it was all about the club closing.
Wow.
And it's one of these days, John, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
Oh.
It is so great. And then like Mark Cohn and Mark Cohn wrote an incredible song. It was a Christmas love song.
Ooh.
And we made a music video, and I played his girlfriend in it. And I mean, it was like really, really great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this song is so evergreen. I mean, you could listen to the song today. It's so good.
Can you find it anywhere?
He posted it a while ago. I know that I had posted it, I think, on my Facebook page. If I find it, I'll send it to you. It's really, really good.
Oh, that's awesome.
So those were the kind of things that we were doing back then
Right.
that, nobody except our friends saw.
I remember seeing not too long ago, maybe like, God, it must have been when he passed away, but Kevin Meaney was outside one of the clubs in Boston, and it's a brick of a fucking whatever the guy is falling around. But he's talking to people online, and in the I think he was doing like a man on the street thing or whatever it was. And it's so like like VHS type choppy or whatever, but so fucking funny. And I was like, that's the equivalent of doing TikTok or whatever the hell else people have going on now.
Absolutely.
And
well,
it's
Mike
super
Rowe,
funny.
the writer, who was
Oh,
a
love Mike
comedian,
Rowe. Yeah,
what he
we had
did,
him on.
He was his book is great.
This book is so good.
So
That's a great comedy like guidebook. Like that's a great book.
So great.
Yeah.
But he did this thing where he was in front of the Guggenheim Museum. So he was Crazy Guggenheim in front of the Guggenheim. It was just so silly, but it was so funny.
Oh my God.
Anyway, but Mike really was he was the keeper, because not many people had video cameras.
Right.
And Mike, he has quite a library of stuff from back in the kitchen at the Improv, just goofing around to, and we did a play there. Did you know about that?
No.
We did a play. It was a bunch of comedians. It was called Say Something Funny. We workshopped it in an acting class, and Michael Patrick King was the dramaturge. And what we did was we picked, so it was John Manfillotti, Marty Rackham, me, this woman, Susan Jaffe, who waitress there, who was an actress. And then Jerry Diner. Do you remember Jerry Diner?
Yeah.
Jerry was in it, and a guy named Dean Edelson.
Oh my
and
God.
we wrote little scenes of things that really happened to us during our stand-up careers. So it was like two guys in the back of the room, like watching someone on stage, and someone's doing their act.
Ooh.
And they're like talking about it. And I remember, I dated Kenny Ober forever. So Kenny and I, we had broken up and gone back like a million times. And I, did a scene about not being with him anymore. I mean, it was all very personal but funny and poignant. And
Right.
Silver, and this is a testament to Silver with her whole theater background. She let us do the play inside the club.
Oh.
So in different parts, like we did a scene in the bar, and then we did a scene, at a table, in the corner.
Yeah.
And so it was like people were living our lives with us inside the club.
Wow.
And then every comedian got 2 minutes on stage, sprinkled in of the show,
That's
doing
nice.
their actual act. And then it got moved to off-Broadway. And it was just so incredible, because and actually when we were off Broadway, Larry David and Jerry were it was like ruminating that they were going to be developing a show for Jerry. So they came to see our show because no one had done anything like what we were doing. And they just kind of wanted to see what we were doing. And they came and, talked to us and, actually were very complimentary. But yeah, it was really cool. So that was the kind of stuff that we were doing back in the day.
That's awesome.
That was
That's
great.
cool.
Do you all have this footage, right? It still exists?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh man, I hope you put it together. Like, I would kill to watch any of that stuff. I feel like more and more of that, like especially with Paul Provenza, Judd Apatow is doing it now. Michael Bonfiglio's got they're doing the documentaries and stuff. But it seems to be like a really nice time for people to delve back into past history, bringing up videos, like really getting into people and doing that kind of stuff. Now, like, I don't know, comedy histories and documentaries seem to be like flourishing, and I want more of it and not less of it.
Well, in our documentary with Silver, we're gonna show a bunch of this stuff because because we do talk about the fact, like, when I ask comedians what was different about the Improv, why did it stand? What stood it apart from all the other clubs?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of comics say, the fact that Silver really let us get out of our comfort zone and do things that you didn't feel comfortable doing at other clubs.
Right.
Because Catch was like, it was kind of like the quintessential showcase club where a lot of people were nervous to venture out because you never knew who was in the audience that could really do something for your career.
Wow.
The Improv had that too, but Catch was on a different level. The Improv was worn in. It was the first club of its kind. She never made any changes. It was just like an old shoe, and the, things were broken and she never wanted to fix anything. She just wanted the club to be what the club was, as close to what it was when it first started, so she kept that. And I think a lot of comedians just, it was just warm. It was just different. It was much different.
I didn't get to experience any of that, but when I did start doing stand-up, the Improv in New York was still around, and I used to do the top room, and every now and again I would get to go down to the bottom one. But it still kind of had that feel where you could just do. I would go in every week. I would drive in from New Jersey. One of the guys that hosted the show there became a friend, and we just get on and we could do whatever we wanted. But on the walls there were still all the old newspaper clippings. So like there's like a young Paul Reiser on the wall and like all these other guys that are there. And I have photos of them somewhere because I was like just taking pictures, and then I didn't even realize it. But yeah, and then it shut down and became the Broadway Comedy Club, and then all that stuff was gone. So I don't know who got any of it, but yeah, it's all kind of gone. Do you guys have like a group chat? Or like, because one of the things I think I love, and I don't know, I would love to see a timeline of events at some point somebody could put together. But like you, Michael Patrick King, and like Michael Patrick King, I remember seeing him do an interview with Jon Stewart, and he and John used to go out on the road together, do stand up a couple times or whatever. They're talking about it. But like every one of you guys kind of branched off, and you're all over show business. I mean, like every comedian like is over here doing a writing gig, producing, directing, kind of that kind of stuff. You guys ever like hang out and go like, can you fucking believe that we started on, wherever, and like now we're like heavily involved in TV? Because I don't know that happens too much anymore, but it's interesting that you guys all kind of like found
yeah. Well, we interviewed Michael for the Silver doc, and then we were inseparable. It was me, Michael, John Manfilati, and Marty mostly. We were together all the time.
Right.
And, I was always like the Shirley MacLaine, hanging out with all the guys, and after I interviewed Michael, I said, he actually came over to me and he said, we have to have dinner with John and Marty. We got to do this. Cause Marty doesn't do stand-up at all anymore. He left show business, teaches soccer. He played soccer actually when we first met him. He was a big college star. Anyway, and I think he had a professional soccer career before he did stand up full time. Anyway, so we all went out to dinner.
Right.
And it was great. Michael lived around the corner from me on the Upper West Side, when he was, very poor. He lived in a like basement apartment. I had to co-sign his first credit card.
Wow.
Oh my God. Wow.
I know.
That's great.
Yeah, now he's billionaire.
Yeah.
But it's we do. I mean, we kind of pinch ourselves. We hang out together, and look, we've been friends for 40 plus years, and it's like, wow.
That's great.
Yeah, it's really special.
Because I know I said I would keep you for an hour, but I got a few more. Can you stay for a little bit longer?
Sure.
Okay.
This is a testament to how much I like you and wanted to do this, because I'm a huge baseball fan. So I had to tape the game tonight, the World Series.
Oh shit! All right. Okay.
Oh no, it's okay. I taped it.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. I appreciate that, by the way. So what's funny? Actually, oddly enough, Rita Rudner was taping tennis or something like that. It was like a tennis case, or she was missing playing tennis, and I was like, God, I keep dragging people away from their activities.
Well, I write baseball pieces.
Oh, nice.
I write on a Metsmerized. It's a Mets site. I'm a huge Mets fan.
It's a great name.
Awesome.
And so now that the World Series is going on, I write recaps and I post them, and
Oh, that's great.
It's a big passion. Anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah. So can you talk about the Osbournes for a little bit?
Sure.
You went from Ellen to the Osbournes, and
Sure. I kind of look at it as I left Ellen, I went to the Osbournes, and then everything was in color. I was with the greatest people. Everybody appreciated me.
Wow.
The Osbournes was the most incredible experience I've ever had, and quite honestly, I've been chasing that high my entire career, because I've never had anything else that ever came close to it. It was just the most amazing group of people, and it was at a time when reality hadn't really it was new, and there was nothing to compare it to, and it was also, what was very special about it is that it was producers who were independent contractors working with the network, instead of what it morphed into, where you have a middleman now. You have a production company that gets between you and the network, and it's more notes and more people, too many people in the kitchen. Some people, the network's not on the same page as the production company, and then you don't like what they're doing, but you can only say so much because you're not high level or whatever. But it was so much freedom creatively, because reality, what it became, unfortunately, in a lot of instances, it became scripted.
Yeah, turned into scripted reality. Yeah,
it really did. And with the Osbournes and even Newlyweds, which I did after, we never wrote anything for these guys. We never told them what to say. No one ever told Ozzy what to say, or the kids. You were a slave to the footage. Okay. We shot a ton of footage. They gave you the money to shoot a ton of footage, and a lot of it, I think Jeff Stilson at one point said, for every 500 minutes, we used a minute,
Wow.
But whatever we shot, you had to use. You had to make a show. There was no going back and doing pickups. You had to just use what you had. So the creativity factor was, like I said, it was very liberating. Mm-hmm. And you did it with music. You did it with, like, we had this one scene. It was so much fun to do. And I worked in post-production. Mm-hmm. So I worked with the editors putting the shows together, which is my favorite thing to do. So we wanted to shoot Ozzy. He and Sharon were going, I think they were going to England, and we couldn't get clearance to shoot at the airport. We couldn't get them in a plane. Mm-hmm. So they were in a town car, but the way it looked in the inside, it looked like it was kind of a private plane.
Huh. Okay.
So the guy who was driving, I think it was his road manager or whatever, we took it. We found an insert of a pilot, like punching in like instruments, to make it look like the plane, like he was in a plane. Uh-huh. And then we tilted the shot. So when the car drove off, we tilted it to make it look like it was starting to ascend.
Oh my God.
And it was a car.
Yeah.
So, Ozzy used to get cuts of the show to look at, and apparently when they brought it to him to look at, he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you made the car into a plane, and you made Tony the pilot." You know, he was like, "This is crazy." But they were the nicest people in the world.
Oh,
You know, the first season, I was a segment producer, which meant that, and I never went in the field if they were going anywhere. I was always at the house.
mhm.
So there were 3 segment producers. There was a early morning, there was an afternoon, and then a night. So you would kind of like, overlap a little bit with the producer before you. And one of the people who was working on the show, who was influential of me getting the job, was Henriette Mantel. I don't know. Do you know Henriette?
I don't. Yeah, I know a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So Henriette, she was, I think, the afternoon, and I came at night.
Okay.
And so, you kind of like see the action of what's going on. And your job as a segment producer was to kind of, talk to the director and say, whatever you saw, like, because you were working in post-production, you knew what you wanted to do with what they were shooting.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there were certain things that you saw that maybe they wouldn't see.
Okay.
So this one episode, Jack was reunited with the bulldog Lola, who he was in love with, and Lola was away for, I don't know, a week or whatever. And
Mhm.
that night they were being reunited, and it was at night, and the lights were on in the pool. It was very romantic, and we'd said to the director, "We want you to shoot it like he's being reunited with like his girlfriend, you know."
Okay.
And the dog like jumped in the pool, and then you see the lights, and then we knew in edit we were going to have, you'd see the point of view of he's going swimming towards the dog, and then you see the dog swimming towards him, and they were like in a hug and whatever. So it was just, they let us do whatever we wanted.
Wow.
And I don't know, I never worked on a show where they let you do everything you wanted. I mean,
Right.
they just trusted us, and they saw what we were doing, and they just said, just do what you do.
Yeah. It was definitely the most entertaining of all those reality shows that came out around then, because you didn't get the vibe that anybody was like really shitty, like either. You know what I mean? Like the Osbournes were just incapable of that kind of quality about them, and it was fun.
They were really cool. They were very gracious, because we were they call like Video Village, where all the monitors are and everything.
Mhm.
There was a room set up for the segment producers to hang out.
Right.
So a lot of times during the night, especially, the kids were out. Ozzy and Sharon were getting ready to go to bed. But you had to stay there because you didn't know what was going to happen. Maybe when the kids came home, there was going to be some content that you could shoot.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times we stayed there till like 3:00 in the morning. And Sharon would always come down with like movies that she had, she from the Producers Guild or whatever. So we would watch first run movies, and she would bring food in, and we would, we could drink, and, we go out and smoke pot. I mean, it was like, we would smoke pot while we were editing, like Henriette and I would go out and smoke pot, and then we'd come back in and edit with the editors. I mean, it was a really, really different time.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Do you ever see them? Have you seen them since?
I don't see the Osbournes. I mean, I actually saw Kelly some years ago because I wrote on a Joan Rivers tribute special,
Oh,
and
nice.
she was there. But I'm friends with a lot of people from MTV from those
awesome.
days. We all still, and I did a lot of jobs with a lot of these people. We went on to do other things together, and it's family. It's kind of like how I am with my comedian friends.
Nice.
These are the Osbourne people that I will always be friends with.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to you, I feel like, right? For being able to like, you take to people and then they're part of your journey, and you don't just like leave them behind at that segment. Like, those people travel with you.
It's such a crazy thing, because you'll appreciate this. When I see people that are in films together or in TV series together, there's such an intimacy, I had there was a student film that I auditioned for when I was doing stand-up, and there was a comedian named Jack Simmons. I don't know if you knew who Jack was.
I know
Okay.
who. Yeah, I've.
Okay. So Jack, I had no attraction. And he was not a bad looking guy, but I was not
Mhm.
attracted to Jack at all.
Right.
And the scene that I had with him, I had to make out with him in the scene. And after I made out with him, it was like, oh my God, Jack Simmons, I was like, oh, I think I dreamt about him that night. I was like, oh my God. And I was thinking to myself, I mean, that was just an audition.
Right.
But how do people that are in shows together that are intimate, not like fuck all the time,
Right.
or like leave their husbands or wives, or whatever, but I look, it happens a lot that
Yeah.
people, have affairs or whatever, but
Sure.
it's just that intimacy that you have in such a short period of time. So you can imagine,
Yeah.
how close you get with people, with writing too, you're in a writer's room and you're there for
Mhm.
like 12 hours.
Yeah.
So if you're a dick and you're in the writer's room, there are a lot of
Yeah.
people that may be better writers than you,
Mhm.
but personality wise, if they're not fun to be around, they would rather have someone like me who may not be as great,
Mhm.
but I'm fun to be with. You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I could still do the job.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and it's just being on the road. Like how many times you're on the road. I used to do a lot of USO shows, and
Mhm.
we would go in a van and go from place to place. And there
Wow.
was a comedian. I'm not going to mention her name, but she was there before me, and it
Mhm.
was two guys, and they could not wait for me to get there because I was replacing her on the next leg of the tour.
Okay.
Okay.
And they had this thing they were doing, and it was Van Talk. It was just this stupid juvenile game, Van Talk, and it was like, Van Talk, can I help you? And they would just come up with scenarios, and so she hated Van Talk, and they couldn't believe that she hated Van. Like, how could you hate Van Talk?
Right. Yeah.
So she was on the phone with her manager complaining about them in front of them.
Oh my God.
And then she actually said, and they're doing Van Talk. It was like, Ma,
Yeah.
they're doing Van Talk. It was so ridiculous. But, you got to be able to hang.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Especially on those long road trips and stuff like
Yeah.
that too. That's why one of my best friends is a comedian we started together, Joanne Filan. Do you know Joanne?
I don't.
Oh, she's great. So we go out on the road together all the time. And I literally it's to the point where I just don't really want to go with anybody. Like I not only do but we have such a fucking blast. From one of the first times was this is how I knew she was going to be great too. Cause we've always been friends and friendly. And we liked when we saw each other on shows. Cause sometimes comedians don't talk to each other, but she and I would always be like, hey, what's going on? Just two idiots. But I had, I was headlining a college in Kentucky, and I was just like Joanne, you want to go to Kentucky? And I get to bring somebody with me. And for us, I look like how I look, and Joanne is gay. She talks about being gay and married and all this stuff. And I love traveling to red states there because we're always like, you keep the car running because we're gonna die.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one time she almost killed us. It was so great though. I don't even care if we died. We were driving to a gig, and I couldn't even tell what was going on either, but there was some weird fork in the road. And the next thing we knew, we were on the wrong side of the bridge and just going. and I saw headlights and she saw headlights, and we both just went, huh. And she did this immediate and did this crazy ass K-turn on the bridge over water and just got us around. We didn't even know how to happen, but the takeaway was well, at the very least we wouldn't have had to do the gig. I mean, that couldn't have been that. So we miss Virginia. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than being on the road with comedians that you just have a great time with.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you this quick one. Kathy Ladman and I, we used to do stand-up a lot together, and very rarely would there was a time where they would have more than one woman on the show.
Right.
You were always the token woman.
Mm-hmm.
But Bud Friedman actually was very, very cool and used to let Kathy Ladman and Carol Leifer and I do shows. at the Improv at Harrah's in Vegas. So we used to do that all the time. So anyway, so Kathy and I get this gig. I get a gig, and I guess I got Kathy to do it with me. And it's in Whistler. So we're at this ski resort, and it's beautiful and it's great. And I get hurt on the slopes, and I'm on crutches, and and the audience thinks that it's like a prop. And I'm like, no, I had to get an MRI today, and I tore like cartilage or whatever,
Oh my God.
So Kathy and I, we do our show, and I guess like a week later or something, we get a letter sent to us from the person who booked us, who loved us, by the way, but it was a letter from someone who had come to our show who didn't like our show, right? So Kathy was an English teacher before she was a comedian. So we're reading the letter, and we took a red pen and graded all the grammar and the misspelling and everything. And that's what we did. We just graded her letter. Didn't say anything about the letter or anything, and then mailed it back to her.
Oh my God, that's so great.
Awesome.
Oh, fucking beautiful.
Yeah. So
that is amazing. She's great.
She's great.
And then, so did you go from the Osbournes straight to Sex and the City?
I went from the Osbournes. I did Newlyweds, and then it was kind of and then I did Sex in the City, and then after Sex in the City, I did. What do I do? It's the order is just so crazy. I'm trying to think. I think it was the other way around. I had done Sex in the City prior to the Osbournes.
Wow.
So I went from Brotherly Love to Sex in the City.
Okay.
And then after Sex in the City, I was with a writing partner on both of those shows. We split up, and I came to New York because like I said, I'm a big sports fan. So I used to go on this guy's sports show. He had a local sports show, but he had a radio show too with a partner. And I used to come on as they call me Crazy Sue Kolinsky. I just used to come on and used to come on and do like this. It's such a long story, but I used to come on and do this kind of kooky trivia game. Right. Anyway, so he got a call from WNEW to do morning radio, and they wanted to pair him up with Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy didn't want to do it. So he thought, well, who else can I get? And he loved me, and I had a lot of fun on the show, and I was a comedian, and he pitched me to them. And they said, okay. So they just gave me the gig. I didn't even have to audition for it, but they came to see me at Caroline's. I happened to get a couple of nights at Caroline's when I came in to meet them. And, thank God it was because they said, we want you on the show. And it was an unbelievable night. And they were like, yes, yes, yes. So I did morning radio on WNEW for like a year and a half. And then I came back to LA, and that's when I started getting into reality TV.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I want to touch on your podcast too, because I do like your podcast, and now you've been doing it. What was the thing? Did you start it like just shy of doing documentaries, or because of it? Because it kind of like almost seems like it goes hand in hand, because like your interviewing skills kind of come in handy, and you can kind of picture that whole, world around you. What was the impetus to do one?
Well, the guy that I did the morning radio show with, I do my podcast with him.
Okay.
And that was like 20 years ago. So he called me up some years ago and said, I'd really like to do a podcast, and I'd like to do kind of what we did on WNEW, but as a podcast.
Nice.
And I said, that's great. I mean, we had great chemistry, and, he's a good friend of mine. And we kind of had, some a period where we weren't really hanging out and talking to each other too much. And he just got in touch with me and said, would you like to do that? And I said, absolutely. And we've been doing it ever since. So it's great. It's no politics. Every now and then some politics may creep in, but it's comedians, it's writers, it's actors.
That's great.
I'd love to have you on the show.
Oh, I'd love to do it. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a blast.
Yeah. And it's, we like you, I mean, you've had, incredible guests, and we get incredible guests, and I just love it. It's and I think that's what I loved about radio so much. It was kind of like stand up without, having to look at people.
Oh, that's so great. Stay never that ever look at people. I've got to I want to thank you for staying on for a little bit longer, and I've got to ask you the last 3 questions that I ask every guest. So
Absolutely. Let me just get in.
yeah,
Jackie has a question from the audience, so I just wanted to bring it up. Jackie had asked, she was wondering if you had any anecdotes about Jessica Simpson.
Jessica was she was a very interesting animal, I have to say. It was I didn't really get to know Jessica that well because I didn't work in the field. I basically just I worked in post, but I tell you what, when I knew that this was going to be, all the producers at that point, there were 2 shows that were up for grabs. It was Newlyweds, and it was a show called Rich Girls with Tommy Hilfiger's daughter and her best friend.
Oh my God, I remember.
And we could decide, what show do you want to do? And I picked Newlyweds because I thought, well, fly on the wall and new marriage, this couple, they're, polar opposites, and, let's, and when I started to look at footage, and that is it tuna or fish? Is it chicken or fish? Came up, because it was she called it what'd she call it? Chicken by the sea?
Yeah,
no, chicken by the sea or something. And she didn't know exactly what it was. We all just went, oh my God, this is going to be a fun ride. And it ended up being a really, really fun ride.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't really have much to say about Jessica. I mean, she was young and her, what I can share actually was that, we kind of had some issues with her father, because her father, he kind of didn't get what we were doing,
Okay.
and he had a producer credit, because they kind of gave him a producer credit, which they usually do. And, he never got some of like the jokes, like we did cold opens, like for most people know, in the beginning of a show, you do like a minute or 2, and then you go into the show. So we had a cold open where she talked about how she didn't brush her teeth or something like that, and it's like, well, what do you do? And she says, I eat breakfast, or something like that, right? And if her father had any brains, he would know that, well, maybe he can get her like a toothpaste. She could be a spokesperson for a toothpaste, because now she does brush her teeth in the morning, or something like that, and has breakfast after.
Right.
So, so he would have notes sometimes, and his notes were, just not getting stuff. So, and then, so one day, she and Nick recorded a song together, and when we were looking at the footage, because we were gonna put it together, we every time everybody was kind of in the room, like listening to the playback and like bopping to the music, but every time we cut to him, just to kind of get him back. And he totally didn't get it, because he didn't have a problem with it, because he didn't get it.
Right.
He was never like the beat. He was always off with the beat. Like everybody else was like going like this, and he was like all jerky. We did that on purpose in the editing to make him look terrible. And he never had a problem with that, because he didn't get it.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, it was a fun show. It was much different than the Osbournes, because the Osbournes, they were like, you could shoot us anywhere. Sharon would come down from her bedroom. Her hair would be in 5 different directions. You could see them in their worst state, and they never cared. The Newlyweds were a little more guarded.
Right.
So it was a little different.
I wonder why that is. I wonder if it was because they were newer to they were younger and newer to fame, whereas Ozzy had been through it.
Yeah, but I also think they were a different family. They were just different. Like someone was telling me, do you remember Liza Minnelli had a very short-lived show, and she had just married David Guest, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
And I just remember, this was actually something that I said in my act, because someone said, I think he's gay, her husband. And I said, think he's gay. He met her at a Liza Minnelli concert.
Oh, that's gold.
Anyway, so I had heard, because I knew someone who worked on the show, and once the talent gets control of the show and dictates what you're going to shoot and what you're not going to shoot, you will have a horrible show.
Right.
Because if they're not going to peel back and let you in, because that's why people want to watch the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And especially with the Osbournes, because we did nothing but let them just be. They were very, very comfortable. They were very, very comfortable. Nick and Jessica, like I said, a lot more guarded. Like, they didn't let us, I think they let us in their bedroom once, and it was because they were packing to go on vacation, and we needed that transition. We needed that footage.
Yeah.
But like, we never shot them in bed together, or, nothing.
Jeez.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, what a bummer.
Yeah. But it was a really, really fun show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot. Like, didn't she date Dane Cook for a bit too, or something like that? Or is that like a rumor? I don't even know. But I remember, like,
I think she did.
Right,
And I think she had a fling with Johnny Knoxville.
oh my God, yes, that I do remember.
Because
Yeah.
she worked on what was the remake of
Yep.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
it. Holy
yeah.
shit.
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you kind of a cool story. So
Oh, sweet.
so she was away doing this. Was she doing a film? I don't know if she was doing the film or she was on the road. And Nick, Nick was he was a blue collar guy, nice guy, very down to earth. And he and his brother, I don't know if you remember the show, they were always like doing stuff because Nick had this reputation that he was very cheap. So, if they had to build something or, they never wanted to hire anybody, they would, move things themselves. So Nick did a lot of work in the house before, when she was away. So, and he did some decorating, put pictures up and whatever. So she comes home and she's not very appreciative. And I mean, he really was, took a lot of pride in the fact that he did all this, and she didn't even really care, kind of. And it really hurt him. And he says to her, so they go outside and they're having a beer. They're sitting out in the backyard, and he tells her that she's a brat. And she says, what do you mean? And he's like, and he really kind of called her on it a little bit. And she was like, oh, and she kind of like apologizing. And she says, well, I'll make it up to you. In the bedroom, basically. And then he looked at her and he said, I want a raise. And we're watching this and we're thinking, what's a raise? Like, what doesn't she do? Like, does he want a blowjob? I mean, is she not giving blowjobs? Like, what is a raise in the bedroom? But it was one of those moments. It was really scenes from a marriage. I mean, the whole show was, but that moment was really scenes from a marriage.
Right.
Where you really saw that, you kind of saw that the foundation was cracking a little bit in their relationship.
Wow.
And, they were apart a lot, and they were on TV. I mean, I think people who sign on to do reality, I don't think that, especially back then, maybe they're more savvy now, but back then, I just don't think they realize how invasive it is. And, like I said, in order to do it right, you have to let people in. Yeah. And they're going to see you in ways that you may not be comfortable with, but you have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of marriages, a lot of couples broke up. A lot of these reality show marriages just didn't make it.
Yeah.
And, he was 7 years older than her. He probably wanted kids sooner than she did. She was, young, and she, it was like, it was all about her career and her career and her career. Sure. And I think he was, his career was important to him, but I think, he probably wanted to start a family, and, and I don't, and I think it was pretty public after a while that I don't think her father really kind of, wanted that for her, to be with someone older and, whatever. And so, it was hard. It was hard for them, So, and look, a lot of people thought she was, oh, she's so stupid and whatever. And like, she became like, a great businesswoman, and she started a line of clothes
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And she became an entrepreneur and so she did pretty good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. I know. I can't imagine having to go through that, that kind of public thing while you're trying to make a relationship work. I can't even fucking make one work when I'm on the road.
Oh,
Like, and nobody's watching,
well, I worked with a guy who was a director and a producer, and his girlfriend at the time worked as an esthetician, and she, someone wanted to do a reality show about her business.
Mhm.
And she came home and said to him, yeah, so I really want to do it. And, I want you to be in it. And he was like, oh, there's no fucking way. This is what I do.
Right.
I'm not going to be in this with you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll last a week and we
Yeah, it's
won't
a
be
death.
together.
Yeah, I feel like they last more on the cover of like Us Weekly than they do in real life when they're on when they're in a relationship. Like, I think we've appeared more times on this rag magazine than anything else.
I could never do it.
No,
I
me
could
neither.
never do it.
That would be fucking nerve wracking as it is. I'd never be able to be myself.
It's just weird.
It is.
I don't know, man. I feel like I tried out. I went to the audition for Big Brother, and they were gonna take me because he was like, you have abs. I'm like, no, and I was in great shape at the time. He's like, get abs. He's like, and I want you to come back and do like, I had like that next interview level, and I'm like, you know what? I'm supposed to be on a cruise. He's like, well, you want to be on the show? Or you want to be on a cruise? It's your call, right? And I'm like, And at the time, I chose the cruise, right? Because I had another friend that was in the industry, and they're like, you're gonna give up your whole life and be in this house that tapes you 24/7, and I have multiple businesses. I was like, you know what? And then the cruise ended up to my marriage, so I'm married to the girl I went on the cruise with.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
a
great.
win.
Yeah, you made the right choice.
Part of me was like, I think I could have done it though. I feel like, and the funny part was, I went to the audition.
How much time did you have to get the abs?
So, he gave me I think he gave me 2 months.
What was this like? Oh, I was like Evelyn Wood abs. Like, was it that quick?
He, legitimately, where he was like, lift up your shirt, and I was like, and I lifted up my shirt, and he's like, all right. He's like, you have 2 months. You need to have abs. Do whatever it takes. Because like that was because they had certain like types that they needed to fill. So he saw me as like this one certain guy that was supposed to be placed into that house. And then I didn't even go to the thing for me. I went because somebody else wanted to go audition, and they didn't get like the callback interview. Like they were just like, meh, whatever. Like, so it's a cattle call. There's a million people walking through the place. It was interesting, but I might have done it.
Yeah, it's like just because I work behind the scenes, so I know what they do and how they manipulate and how they, I worked on a show where, and it was real. I mean, it really was real. This woman had a relationship with this guy, and he wasn't the most exciting character, but it really was her boyfriend. And she invited him to her house, and she made dinner for him, and the dinner wasn't really that exciting or whatever. And, we gave the production company or the network a cut, and they were like, oh, no. We don't like this. They wanted us to completely re-edit it to make it look like she was breaking up with him.
Oh,
but it wasn't shot like that because she wasn't breaking up with him. Yeah. So we had to go through like every single frame to find like if there was a moment where she was like, maybe like made a gesture that was like not so nice.
Right.
And just manipulate the footage so much to make it a complete 180 from what it was.
Wow.
And, they pick people who they want to play a certain part,
Yeah.
There was a group of women in this show, and they were all, they didn't really know each other that well, but it was under the guise that they had been friends for like 10 years.
Okay.
And they had their annual like weekend retreat that they would go somewhere and stay at like a lodge or whatever.
Yeah.
And during the shooting of it, they were all kind of talking intimately. And one of them talked about that she had had an abortion. And all the women went, oh, like they didn't know.
Yeah.
And I was like, they've been friends for 10 years. Of course they know. We had to tell them you have to know. You can't act like you don't know. And I said, look, as women, I can walk into a public bathroom, strike up a conversation with a strange woman, and within 5 minutes, I can know the history of how she lost her virginity.
Yeah.
That's how women are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
we know things about each other, and
Mhm.
we know things about each other that are really intimate, and we don't even know the people that well.
Right.
Yeah.
10 years. So, you know, that's when, you know, I kind of started to sour a little bit with what I was doing, because it was just such bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, they wanted people to fight all the time. And it was like, they don't even know each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
some of the women just met before they got the gig.
Right.
And they wanted them to hate each other and talk shit about each other. And it's like, and some of them were like, we really don't feel comfortable because, you know, we don't really know them. But
Right.
it's like, well, you know, I kind of own you,
Yeah.
you know, you signed on to do this show,
Right.
and you don't get like inside information of where we're going with it. So
Wow.
you kind of have to play along.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have no control over who you are,
No.
which is crazy, right?
And
brutal.
what they do with the footage.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
one woman on this particular show, same show, was having a private conversation with a producer, and the camera was just rolling.
No.
Shouldn't have been.
Wow.
She thought she was having a private conversation. And we used some of that footage because she wouldn't give up what we needed for her to give up when the cameras were on her, and she knew. And
Wow.
the cameraman just happened to use what could have been her talking about what we needed her to talk about.
Wow.
Wow.
And you don't know. You
that's
don't
horrible.
know.
And that contract gives them everything. Any minute that it's on, it's theirs then.
One of my friends now is on a reality show called The Circle. I'm gonna have to ask him what kind of shit they did, because I didn't watch it. Not that he. Sorry, buddy. But
He was a friend.
Yeah. Just said that out loud. But my other friends watch it. They fill me in. But I'm wondering if it's because it's on Netflix and it's called The Circle or whatever. And it's kind of, I've seen clips and shit of it. Trying to save my ass. I've seen some clips. But it is interesting. Now I gotta ask him. He's gonna be like, "Why the sudden interest?" I'm like, "Oh, you know, just
I was just
Curious.
rewatching the season.
Right.
totally hooked, and I'm noticing some things. Wonder if he meant to say that, or you know. But now he's dating somebody from the show, and I'm like, "Is
Oh,
this a
really?
season 3 set up? Like, what's going on?" Now I'm just gonna be like fake on all this stuff. Fucking fake guy.
Oh, well, you know, friends of mine, friends and people I know, you know, they would say things to me. And I said, look, you know, if you ask me questions, I'm going to completely burst your bubble.
Right.
Because a lot of what you're seeing with the shows that I did after the Osbournes and Newlyweds,
Mm-hmm.
so much of it was just complete bullshit.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I don't know. Also, like, just in celebrity life in general, if I was a celebrity, I would legitimately just kind of like, why wouldn't I go out with somebody who's like, whatever, be like, hey, do you want to fuck around and really screw up the tabloids and say that? I would do that. It would just be fun. Like, how are they not doing it? Like, I'm assuming, like, you know, hey, you want to hold hands? They'll go nuts, you know, and it's like, you know, I would be
Right.
my whole thing just to keep
Right.
myself entertained.
Right. Like,
Oh.
you know, you make out with some actor just
Yeah.
as a goof, and then everybody's like, oh God, I saw them
Absolutely.
making out, and
Yeah.
and they're married. And you know, I remember when I was dating Kenny Ober, we were very good friends with Tom Candiotti and his wife. So we used to go to a lot of all the Dodger home games, and we used to sit with Donna.
Mhm.
And the Kenny happened to be on TV with Donna, but they didn't show me. I was sitting next to him on the other side. So all these people were like, "Oh God, who's Kenny with?" Oh God, they showed Kenny, you know, with this woman. I was like, "It's the pitcher's wife," and I was sitting next to him on the other side. You know?
Oh my God, that's so great. Hilarious.
It's so crazy. Even like I feel like celebrity life though now at this point, PR, like their PR agents and their teams control the narrative of what they want you to. I can't say who, like the party I did, but I do a lot of like celebrity events.
Mhm.
And one of them, like I'm there physically, like taking pictures and stuff, but you're not allowed to release any pictures, so nothing go on social media. And then 2 weeks later, the same room, everything that I had done and created was said to be in an entirely different state, an entirely different type of event. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is amazing that it's manipulated to that level that like reality doesn't even count. Like it doesn't matter. It's what they wanted to portray. So it's
now I'm going to say I was in London in that photo.
I was in
London.
But yeah.
Halloween.
Oh yeah, well I worked on that show too, Corey's, and it was supposed to be shot in California, and it was shot in Vancouver.
Wow.
And Corey was living in a house with his wife that he didn't own.
Right. Holy shit.
And I remember Corey Haim, came into the house and he was like, wow, this is, man, look at you. He's like, you're doing really well. And he lived in like some shit house in Van Nuys, but he had to, and I felt bad for Corey Haim because he had to, play the part that his buddy was, really super, super successful living in this, the house was gorgeous, and he had to just, go along.
I could never, even if I was an actor for doing that kind of stuff or whatever the hell. I mean, maybe, I guess if I needed the money, I don't know. But I feel like I'm not even good enough an actor to fucking pretend I'm doing it for the script. Like there's no like, so if somebody was like, oh, you got to pretend, I'm like, I don't know if I could do it. I would be too like, you would just see it on my face. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's too weird. But I still think Corey Haim lives in that house. Not Corey Feldman lives in that house from The Burbs. So kind of a bummer to me. Yeah. Like no, he still lives in that cul-de-sac, and Rick Ducommun and Bruce Dern are there. And I just watched that for Halloween. I love that movie so much. Have you've seen that movie, right?
No, I never did.
Oh, it is.
Wow.
Please check it out. It is literally one of my. It's not an overly great film, but it's not a bad film either, and it's got a lot of charm to it. So it's really, but yeah, it's one of those. And Bruce Dern, come on,
I know Bruce Dern. Oh,
yeah,
so
the guy
good.
steals the whole fucking movie.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you the 3 questions that we ask every guest, and I've So first question is, I forgot my first question. If you go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself to help you today?
Don't let fear rule you.
Ooh,
good
I like
advice.
that one. Was that is that in relation to performing or no?
Just being fearful to doing things, like not trusting your instincts sometimes,
Yeah.
Just don't. I hate to say just do it because it sounds like such a stupid thing to say. But if you feel, I mean, there were definitely times in my life where I didn't act on my instincts, and I wish I would have.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right.
Second question is, what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
What?
What had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
My relationship with Ken Ober. Although I love Ken so much, but that was something that had to end. And I loved him, and I loved him so much, and he became a very good friend. And sadly, he's not here anymore. But that relationship had to end because that got me to the person I'm with now, my husband, who I actually know since junior high school. So that ending that relationship took me to Tom.
Ah, nice. Happy ending. Very nice.
And there has been some happy endings there, but
that's extra. You guys have to pay for. You can join our Patreon.
Oh, I get a piece of that. Okay,
yeah,
there we go.
Oh, yeah. Royalties abound. It's fine. We just gotta get your husband to sign something.
Oh yeah, I'll drug him. Go ahead.
The behind the scenes footage is him passed out, but you got his hand and a pen. Oh God, I love it. Last question is ties into the show. So if this was a genuine dystopia, more so than it is now, you could either have a government collapse, alien zombies, a comet heading toward the Earth, or climate change. But you wake up and you find out it's everybody's last day on Earth. What would be your epic death? How would you want to go out? And what's happening? Zombies, aliens, climate. What's going on?
Oh my God. Wow, it's all so horrible.
It could be fun. It could be good. You don't know.
It could be good.
It's your own choice. Yeah.
What's but those are the choices. It has to be one of those.
Well,
Oh, it
right?
could be anything.
anything.
I
Oh, it
just
could
threw
be
out some
anything.
choice. Yeah, anything you want to be happening
How
could be
does
happening.
it?
But
How
do you-
does it end for me?
Yeah.
Honestly, in my sleep. I want it to end in my sleep.
Oh wow. All right.
I don't want to go out in any kind of blaze of glory.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to just not wake up.
My God, if you can, man, that's. Oh wait, so you want to sleep through the whole day?
Oh, what am I doing during the day? You're saying
Yeah,
before
yeah.
I die?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What's like your So
Oh, my last great day?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I would definitely smoke cigarettes because I quit a long time ago and I sometimes miss it. I would definitely be shooting a lot of pool.
Ooh.
Okay.
I would be going to a baseball game and
Oh.
getting field seats.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh yeah, nice.
And what else? And maybe eating lobster.
Oh, very nice.
There
Okay,
we
I
go.
think I have the image because we have an artist draw everybody's last moment, like what they say they want to do doing. I think I'm gonna have you with a lobster bib and a cigarette in your mouth on home plate with a bat and a comet heading to like you're gonna pitch the lat. That's what I'm gonna have.
That's great.
That's what I'm gonna set up.
That's
I'll send you that.
great.
That is a
Cool.
fun one.
Thank you so much for doing this. I love talking to you. I'm so glad you got to come on.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And when Carol, had emailed me and asked me if I wanted to do your show, I have to tell you, I went online and I watched some of your show and I saw a lot of the guests that you had on and I was very flattered that you wanted me. So thank you.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
It was beyond
Very
a
nice.
pleasure having you with us.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks
so many
much.
great stories. Definitely. We definitely got to have you come back for
Yeah,
sure.
we're gonna have you come back on, and we do an MS benefit in March if you want to come back on for that too. That'd be kind of cool. We do like a 24-hour.
Absolutely. I have 6 degrees of MS, so I would definitely do that. And the next time I come to New York, we have to go out. and hang
Oh yeah,
out.
absolutely.
Yes.
I'm absolutely up for that.
Great.
For sure.
Awesome. Great talking to
All
you.
right.
Great
Thanks so
talking to
much.
you.
Hang out
Great-
backstage. All right,
Peace.
see you in a little bit.
Bye.
Dystopia tonight.